Thank you, Will. Welcome, everybody, to May's Sustainability Committee meeting. We are going to start with the acceptance of the meeting minutes from April 24th, 2025. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I just have questions.
Yeah.
I don't have them in front of me on attendance. Like some of those people, when I reviewed them, the video wasn't up on the city website, but I didn't think all those people were there. And of course now I don't have them in front of me to remember who, but.
I think we got rid of some in that
Did-
original email.
Did it get
Um,
corrected?
yeah, the only guests that were here, Tyler, Katie and Molly, who were on Zoom,
Okay.
UH students, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there were some other people who had been here, like maybe the
I think it was
previous
a month before
one,
that-
and
yeah,
and
over
had
by
got,
accident.
though, yeah.
Should be correct now.
I'll move to approve them. And does anyone here now who attended last month's meeting not see their name up there?
God, I
It's
can't
very
see.
difficult.
Can you
What?
dim the lights in here? Or maybe-
No, they
Those
took
front
the
lights off.
covers off, I think is what happened. I was the
Oh.
same thing. I was so
Oh,
bright
Yeah.
because they're redoing the screen.
Oh,
They're putting a
okay.
touch screen in, but
There we go.
better. Oh,
Old school, old school.
awesome. Turn them off.
Yes, that's correct. I was not here, so.
And then
Much better.
in the reverse, is there anyone here now who was not there at the last meeting whose name's there? But your name's not up there.
No.
Okay, so we're good. All right, that looks like it works. Burton?
Just, because Effie said that we knew she was gonna be away, right?
This month,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, and was there anybody else
Who
who
has an
notified you?
excuse? Yeah, so Colleen couldn't make it. She had a work event, I think, and then Max Ward emailed me a couple hours ago saying he couldn't make it tonight either.
Okay, so then only other person who we haven't heard from,
Chaz.
Chaz and,
Tori.
Oh, Tori.
And
Tor-
Fred, is Fred not a member? Yeah.
Oh, and Fred too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So, Tori did give kind of like a blanket thing
She's
back in
busy.
February, said
a
she
work.
won't be available till summer, so,
Okay, so she know, okay, I just think,
yeah.
so, we haven't seen Fred last night.
Yeah,
You did see me, didn't you?
yeah, we talked about the meeting. He didn't say anything about missing it.
Yeah, okay, so.
So maybe he'll come in still.
Fred,
So
Chad,
my-
and Tori.
And I saw Chaz out and about on Saturday night, so.
Okay.
Are there any other comments on the meeting minutes? I believe someone made a motion.
I
for your
move
meeting.
to approve.
Anyone second the motion?
I'll second that.
Jessica, all in favor?
I,
I guess I should abstain. I wasn't there.
So what I learned over the years is you don't need to abstain if you were not at the meeting. You can still
Okay.
vote on it.
I did look them over, so looks fine to me.
There you go.
Okay.
Suppose I'll just go down the agenda that's posted if there's no objection. Going with the community conversation up. First up is the master plan / cap, what's next? And Kate, are you leading that?
No, I think that was an Effie.
Is that,
But I don't know. I think it was kind of just discussing the next community conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because there's been talk of doing one about the master plan and
Topic.
connecting it to the cap, and so have we come to any?
We
decision?
talked about that last night. And we can, the group of us who were there could probably share collectively. But the basic thing is this. Portsmouth Climate Action is a nonprofit who wants to support the CAP. And we want to do it in relationship to what will be most effective and coordinating with whatever is going on from it would be a real kind of back and forth between the cities. So tonight it would be good to know if there is a time, I think we'll focus our minds more. If we set a date, because then we get the library, we got a longer lead time. And what I'm aware of is this whole thing is a process. So we could do it at any time, because one of the main goals of a conversation is to keep people and ourselves aware of what the cap is, what's happening with it, referring to the website. And in the conversation, we were thinking there could be, this is all just kind of what is generalized talk. It's not anything written up, but we want to put it open for discussion. Give an overview, just a short one, so that either of you or both of you could do a short overview. Then we could have a potential of maybe 5 minutes by the people who are going to take individual sectors. Like Josh, you had one that I think was on energy, and then you could apply it to the city, and it might be on waste, Jess, or on mobility. So we give people some real concrete things that are planned, that people are trying to move on, whether it's a solar field or it's getting a mini, whatever real things in the community. After they see the overview, they see the different areas. I'm really using in my own mind the Venn diagram of what gives you joy. Break up into groups and let people go to whichever of the 4 sections where there were things that might really be fun, useful, motivating, giving meaningful to their own efforts, and have a dialogue within the group. And then come back to the group as a whole and share to see if there's any connecting of the dots in next action. That's my recollection. That's what goes on in my head. And I throw that out for anybody who was there last night to add on to it.
I guess that would be me.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on that, Bert, this was a discussion on Portsmouth climate action. And I think you'll recall that the aspiration for the community conversations was to do them in partnership with this committee, as well as the library. And I think the conversation that Bert is describing would be focused on supporting implementation of the cap. And at least the ideas we were kicking around last night is that it would be synchronized with what this committee is doing, let's say, preparing for a report to the council. I think we talked about in August, and we've got the spreadsheet that Effie and Jess prepared to talk about later in the agenda. So let's say if we did this in September or October, it would be picking up on whatever the timeline is going forward, and it would be supporting moving ahead on the cap. Maybe, as you said, beginning with an overview and big picture update from Peter and Kate, and then maybe the 4 or 5 topics that end up being prioritized by this committee. I mean, we're starting with the spreadsheet, and there are probably 20 topics on that. If we end up with 4 or 5 of those could be the focus for the community conversation. It could be waste, energy, EVs, transportation. I mean, whatever, let's say this committee ends up with would be a possible way of organizing that event. And then as Bert described, it would have, let's say 4 or 5 short maybe 4 or 5 5-minute updates on looking specifically what's in the cap related to those topics. That's really, I think, where we're going with the spreadsheet and the council meeting. But we'll be talking about that later. Report backs, and then trying to get people in the meeting, community, hopefully, even if it's some of the usual suspects engaged in moving ahead, and then maybe conclude with right action and having a pretty firm connection between what we've been talking about and how to use the right action. Cool. That's the thinking.
This is for my clarification, you know, because master plan is up there and I feel like we had a conversation about that and I forget, was that to link the two? Or was it to do
think
a
that
separate?
I think the actions and the follow-ups that could come out of that could be input to the master plan. And as far as
Okay.
where the opportunities are to support progress on the cap, it could be related to the CIP,
Mhm.
could be related to the master plan. And so I don't know what the timing is on the master plan, but this could be one event that's useful input for the master plan. Because I think last month, Peter, you talked a bit about how there's a consultant on board for that and that it will be doing some public engagement and outreach. So maybe this community conversation could be one useful input for that. Although I don't think we would want to go into great depth on the master plan other than just so much indicating for folks really interested in progress on the cap that the master plan is important, particularly for the long-term strategies. Just like the CIP is important for shorter term strategies. So what do others think about that? And if we're thinking about a September, October, if we want to at least put in a placeholder, it would be useful to do that pretty soon to make sure we have the space.
I think from a master plan standpoint, it would be good to wait till then for an update on the master plan, because it'll be probably the first big public meeting probably will be in September timeframe. So we'll be at the point of the consultant will have wrapped their head around all the things that are going on and what it looks like the city's priorities are, or where to talk about which way to go this way or that way. That wouldn't be until September. So
So this
There'll be some
maybe
lead up
this
things,
should be
but-
after that, maybe.
yeah, I think after that, it'd be,
Yeah,
but not a long time after it,
yeah.
but a little bit after.
So maybe late September, early October.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, and it would be like we've done on others, and I think particularly this one, a three-way partnership between this committee, Portsmouth Climate Action and the library. And then having the city represented by you two.
Makes sense to me. Is there any other conversation?
Would there be a separate, are there other opportunities over the summer, or are all the topics kind of picked up until September right now?
We have, I was talking to Jess. You want to say anything about plastic, what we've been thinking about?
Well, Bert shared that he has a connection to someone who is someone who's young, who's spoke to the UN before, who's talked about plastics and impact from where she lives. And I don't know if it's possible to get her, but having that conversation again, you all know for me, waste and plastics is sort of one of my hot topics. And the way I've been thinking about it more is I don't want to be doom and gloom and I want to give people action, but we are learning more about personal health effects that all this plastic is having on us. And I don't think that's being discussed enough to bring people's awareness to that piece. So how do we bring that in more? And again, help people feel empowered, like they can do things to make change. So that was sort of, did you add anything else?
Would just on a personal, emotional level. There is so much going on that I think politically, economically, environmentally, socially, that is disturbing. That community conversations and similar things are the way, I think I've said it here before, are the immune system for a healthy population and good. By continuing to talk together about things that are important, based on truth and real actions that build community and get like-minded people and others to work together. That's kind of underlining all of these things. Because I was thinking going on, how many of you would, on a 1 to 10 scale, be looking forward to going to a community conversation on what we're talking about? And sometimes they say, yeah, I don't want to go, or yeah, I want to go. It's difficult to prioritize our time. And so I would say, I would come underlying all the, when you ask, are there going to be any other, I say, the topic is almost 50% of it, but it's that community building, hope. Everything that we do, I think, wants to generate hope. That's what, and that's not an easy thing to do in this environment. And so that's why I think it's fun to wrestle with the question, because I think it's possible. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering if there's room, because Peter and I have been meeting with, and our communications director have been meeting with the Bright Action people. And we're thinking it'd be great to do a community conversation focused on Bright Action and sitting down with people and teaching them how to use the platform and set goals. And then maybe even having half of that meeting be dedicated to the community strategies that are in the CAP and trying to get people on board with those, so that later in the year, maybe in the fall, we could sort of set a challenge for Bright Action. So one of their outreach plans that they do with different communities that have a Bright Action dashboard is that they set challenges every year or every couple months for the community to reach. So we're thinking if we can really hype up Bright Action this summer and get more signups, then we can start a challenge in the fall for people to hone in on.
I think we talked, so I love, that's great.
Maybe like July or August.
If we did we could do one on Bright Action and introduce it as a kind of an entranceway, I'm just playing here, into the other conversations on ways to, on the thing. So,
Well, we just thought that there's such a logical tie-in with the implementing the CAP. And
Yep.
there's areas in Bright Action that are called out in the CAP. So just showing people that connection and then how to sign up and what kind of greenhouse gas reductions you can do and why that's related to the CAP, you know. But yeah, we could introduce other topics or move into other things. I don't think it would take, it probably wouldn't be that complicated.
Wouldn't be hard to plan, I don't think.
No,
So we kind of have templates already. So.
yeah.
well, how would you see it going? We usually have a 2-hour workshop, 6:30,
I think even more like 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
I don't know, we'd have to plan it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think, you know, there'd be some demonstration of Bright Action and then some sort of getting into the details of Bright Action and then the link to the CAP.
I think the two could be set up to be complementary, and I think the first one we were talking about really makes sense for later.
Yeah.
September,
Yeah.
October, but I think anything to keep people interested and involved, and it could be that the Bright Action then is a good way of getting people interested in the next one, which is a larger discussion about implementation of the CAP. But certainly if you I think if you had a focus on Bright Action, putting it in the context of the CAP, like we have a CAP, here's some of the major parts in it, maybe encouraging people to take a look at it before they come to the meeting, but then make the first earlier session, the Bright Action session, real hands-on.
Yeah.
Maybe where you have somebody demonstrate its use, talk about how it's used, examples from other places, but then have people try it out. Or start off by saying, here's my situation, how would this be entered?
You were saying June or July?
Yeah, probably.
I'm thinking nothing focuses the mind like a date. So,
Well, June is about
Upon us.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
weeks away.
June's a
So I
little
think
tight,
we're
maybe.
talking about July. When we've done community conversations on Wednesday nights, I don't know if there's another night that would be better or,
The other thing that's a major consideration is that the library has a really extensive distribution, but they're pretty firm about needing to get dates ahead to reserve the space and to get it on the calendar. You know, they want to have a notice a month, at least a month ahead to get it in their
that's why, that's what.
distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we said, um, I'm just playing here. If we did, there's Wednesday, the 30th, the or 23rd. And I'm not wedded to Wednesday, but we could have, if we did it Wednesday, the 30th,
July.
June or July?
of July,
July 30th?
yeah. Anybody, feel like that is a good or bad, date?
I will likely not be here, but don't base it solely on me. So,
You're gonna be here on another one?
yep, probably most others, just that, the end of that week, we may be away, so.
Is that because it's 4th of July
Nice.
weekend?
No, it's the end of July and
Looks like-
no,
Yeah,
it's-
it's July.
I think important for
commu-
this is having someone
yeah,
demonstrated or, you know, at the wheel who's had a lot of experience with Bright Action. And on the PCA end, it's probably the ones with the most experience are Fred and Herb, who's not really involved anymore, but those were the two that I think have done the most in the way of demos.
Effie also was on that.
Yep.
How about the 23rd?
sure.
But Kate, you may be getting so familiar with it that you would be a great driver.
Well,
Nice.
well, what's nice is that, Bright Action, they kind of gave us this like smorgasbord of just templates and like, how to, what do you call it? Like meeting in a
Yeah,
box
yeah.
thing. Just so it goes through like a 1.5 hour meeting where it tells you kind of how to time things,
Mhm.
how to introduce it, what kind of questions you want to get, what kind of informations you want to, geez, I can't talk, get from people. But, so we could try to
Yeah.
plan that and then talk to Effie and Fred and maybe Herb and get them to sort of walk people through it on the screen.
Yeah.
And then have laptops on.
Or there
every-
could be breakouts where
Right.
those guys come and there's separate
Yeah.
laptops
Yeah.
where people go
That'd be
through it,
great.
a little smaller
Or
group.
personal?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
How about the 23rd?
Looks like the Levinson room is booked from 6 to 7:30 on the 23rd.
How about on the 30th?
It's not booked on the 30th.
They're not booked on the 30th.
It's free.
There you go. My attendance for this.
All right, let's say with the 30th.
Okay. Do you want us to reach out and book that?
Yeah, if you reach out and book
Sure.
it, that'd be great.
And their Christie is the contact
Okay.
for that and is very supportive.
And that's 6:30 to 8:30?
I think usually we've been
We do it
doing,
earlier?
yeah,
6:30 to 8 is that?
6:30 to 8, yeah.
Those hours sound good.
5:30? 6:30 is better? Is that what you find?
6:30 to 8, an
Yeah.
hour and a half.
That way people could squeeze in an early dinner, otherwise the 5:30 runs into it.
Community conversation and bright action.
I think if you had it, Bright Action and Portsmouth's Climate Action Plan, that would make it seem a little more timely, probably.
Yeah, and Bright Action, we have a year membership at least, and the Climate Action Plan has targets in it.
Yeah.
So there's reasons to move on both things. Make it a little more
Mhm.
urgency.
Yeah, Bright Action and moving ahead on the Portsmouth cap.
Yeah.
And then part 2 in September could be implementing the.
Yeah.
implementing the
Climate
cap.
Action Plan or, oh, but.
It could also pitch the Bright Action again, because it may be different people. at
Yep.
Meetings.
Are there any other comments on the Bright Action / Portsmouth Climate Action Plan event and
Events.
events in July? September?
So I just wanna, yes. So, yeah. You're reserving it
Sure, yep.
and who will be writing? Do we need to get a group of people? Because we're not gonna meet again now until June, so I think some works for me.
Well, like Kate said, there's a pretty good model for how to do a meeting with it. We could start there and then we could meet if you want to.
So what I would say would be, would it be possible for you to put it together? And we have Portsmouth Climate Action Wednesday night on Zoom. We have it the first Wednesday and the third. If you came to the first Wednesday in July,
Ooh, couldn't do that.
all right? How
Conservation
about
Commission. What about the third Wednesday of June? That work?
third Wednesday of June would be great. If you come together and we could bring that, we could.
We could at least workshop it a little bit and then. I
Yeah,
can
workshop
send-
it, we share a screen and we'll work on it right there.
Okay.
I
What's
think
that
that,
date? You know, the date,
What's that?
date.
Yeah, the June third, let's see. One,
That's
July.
two,
Christie is pretty,
18.
Christie's pretty emphatic about getting a write-up of the meeting, which is usually a short write-up, and she likes a graphic to go with it.
We can.
It could be part of a poster, and I think Jess has done the last few, but maybe are you in the city?
We can do that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could probably
Good.
combine the logos of
yeah,
PCA, the city, and Bright Action or something like
In
that.
the library, or is the library a co-sponsor?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mhm.
library, yeah.
And then do we need to engage with Fred, Herb, or Effie? It sounds like we want them there, but I don't know. I think we need to
Check.
communicate that to them. Fred, Herb, and Effie, I heard, we
Yeah.
would add value by being there. We just need to
Yeah,
communicate that.
well, Fred will be at that meeting. Hopefully we
18th.
get it after. Bill, you're not at that meeting, right?
not at the meeting, but I could reach out to the three of them just to say, this is what we're talking about. Would
If you would do that,
yeah, do you think you could come and possibly?
and we have a
help with the
really
demos.
very lively guest speaker will be Kate from the Sustainability Committee.
She'll be the main driver.
Lively indeed.
Very.
So I'll check with Effie, Fred, and Herb.
All right, so you're doing that. We have it on our books. You're coming, you'll get it to the library,
Yeah.
both the reservation.
Awesome.
Well, you are a real great facilitator. You got a whole meeting plan in 20 minutes. Thank you.
That was very productive. Next is the CAP update / draft spreadsheet review. And Jess, I'm gonna look at you
Yep.
for this.
So the intention really was, this is sort of the work that the committee has prioritized is what we're doing moving forward. And all of you have chosen perspective pieces that you are interested in. I don't know if any of you saw the newest thing, but Effie added some more or filled in, or maybe that was you, Bill, who started to fill in some of the details for the pieces that people are working on as far as, the emissions benefits and thinking about resiliency and feasibility and who we might partner with. So we discussed and we're thinking those are some of the next steps, and also just getting some feedback from all of you about things that you were supposed to, or that you had mentioned that you would consider following up on, and to try to find out where we are at this point. So I don't know, Bill, like if you want to start us off with some of
Sure.
the.
Is there you mentioned that Effie had started filling out, but maybe that's in that version, or is there another version?
There there should be a newer,
Because there's a version that I sent to you and Kate and Effie that just has the transportation input in it.
right?
But if there's not a newer version of that, maybe we should look at the one with the transportation.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the newest one we have, is the one that you sent us.
Okay, so this is the same as what we looked at last, what we looked at last week, that Effie and Jess did, and I took the, assignment for the, I guess, 3 of the transportation ones and just added some notes and comments on that, so I don't know. It may not be useful to go into detail on all of those, other than maybe just to say, just as an example about how I approach those and to see if that looks like it's useful for the other topics. So on the bike ped plan, you can see the cap action in the DTS one. I think the DTSs are the transportation actions. And the ones I looked at, one is implement the bike ped plan. The other is just general expansion of public transit to encourage mode shift. And then the third is the one that is that Josh and Kate Cook got into the CIP, which is a feasibility study for a within Portsmouth shuttle or micro transit. And then for each of those, going across the columns, greenhouse gas emission benefits. And I think when it says medium or light or whatever, that's taken right out of the cap. I think the other things like the benefits to resilience, I think those are things that I added. The feasibility and partner potential is open-ended. I got some very useful input from Tyler on some of these cells, but I already sent this one in, so your input is there for the next round, Tyler, and then the short to medium time frame. I think, yeah, I think all of those were blanks, and I added the entries for those. So I guess that's just as a useful example. One of the things we could consider later is how detailed, I put a lot of information in that. We may want something less. And I also suggested adding another column that would be co-benefits there rather than having to squeeze it in. And Effie said that she thought that was a good idea, but we may need a second table. And Kate, after the last meeting, sent out the notes from the consultant for the actions, which is really useful. So, I mean, there's some of the information from that is the same that's here, and they actually have cool benefits. So that's covered the topics as well. And I think the idea is who's interested in these things. And if you go further down, you'll see the other ones. I mean, these first ones are just the transportation ones. And then we've got the other ones that we looked at in the original table where maybe folks are interested in doing something similar for filling out the table. So I don't know, Jess, this looks like it's going in the direction you're thinking of. There are a lot of topics.
Yes, yep, and I think, I know at one point we had discussed as a committee whether or not we vote to pick some things, but Effie and I weren't necessarily sure if that was the right way to approach it, and maybe just the things that people were interested and motivated to continue to pursue and explore would be sort of more naturally the ones that moved forward at this point, and and then, if there wasn't any interest, or if there wasn't at some point, if, there wasn't a progress forward that could be made at this time, that those might naturally just kind of stay as future actions.
And it could be a blend between what people think, what people are interested in, and what we individually and as a group think are important ones
Mhm.
to include, because I don't think we've got the bandwidth to cover all of these. And if there are, I don't know, 15 or 20, are there 5 or 6 that people would like to work on individually or together, and without claiming we're covering the whole waterfront, and reflecting on why we're doing this, which is to be offering advice to the council on where we are, and input advice from the committee on implementation. And I think one of the things about the transportation one that I tried to be very emphatic about is that all of those go together, that they can't be approached individually. That these are all mode shifts. These are all getting people out of individual cars into alternatives, whether it's walking, biking, or public transit, or linking those together. And then the EVs are also related to that, but that those are really two rather than 4 or 5 topics to me. An EV topic and a mode shift topic.
And I, I mean, speaking to some of the pieces that Ray and I have been working on, we are starting to address the creation of a zero waste plan, which really means more us doing some research and presenting it as a potential CIP budget item if the city would consider hiring a consultant to do a zero waste plan. We would not be the ones creating the plan. So that is more of a finite timeline, right? We can do the research and find out what we know about other communities and what they've done around zero waste plans and a rough estimate of cost and present that opportunity to the council, but that's sort of where it ends for us at that point. So that one, so then we might move on to something else and support the health department and the skip the stuff or other activities. So I think there is a bit of that on this graph and chart too. There might be things that we can explore and only take to a certain point at this time, but it doesn't mean we haven't accomplished anything. It's just where we can get them to right now. So I think that's also worth considering, just as we explore and talk about some of these pieces.
So that would be an example of advice that could go to the council on moving ahead. It would be related to zero waste. And on one of the other topics, it might be recommending specific projects for the CIP, or it might be longer term something for the master plan. But those would be the sort of moving ahead types of recommendations that could come out of the committee.
Yep. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to any other things. Like I know you were, working on some pieces.
I guess 2 updates. I had mentioned at the last meeting that the city council voted for a report back on the Water Enterprise Fund. I said that correctly this time? The stormwater. I did not say it correctly. The Stormwater Enterprise Fund. While I'm still waiting for the written report back, a week ago at the city council's work session, so this is on YouTube, the deputy city manager / city attorney, Suzanne Woodland, gave a pretty detailed explanation on where it's currently at. If I knew how to send a timestamped YouTube video, I would ask that to be sent out, but I'm still waiting for that report back on it. And then after the last meeting, the city council unanimously voted for a similar report back on what the status of the funds have been allocated in the CIP for the past several years for level 2 and level 3 chargers throughout the city. If there has been a plan for that, and if not, the goal would be just to do a RFP for someone else to come in and create a plan, not actually just install them, but say, all right, this is what the options are. Here's a plan to propose going forward. So I would, anticipate that report back in the near future as well. Does anyone else have anything they want to address? Nancy?
I've been doing some research on the electric school buses. So I don't know if that would come under one of
This
those
would be great. I think it's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, is it up there?
Yep.
I can't.
Yeah, it's in one of the pages.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Do you want me to talk a
Please
little
do.
bit about?
That would
well,
be great.
I've done, as time permits, I've done a little bit of research. And I have a memo here from our business administrator, Brian Cisneros. He's the school department business administrator, and he came to us from, I forget what school district, but he lives in Durham. And he was on the Oyster River School Board until a few months ago. So he did a lot of research for Oyster River with electric school buses. So I can give everybody a copy of this. He put his thoughts down. Oyster River decided not to go with electric school buses at this time. What I've been able to find out, the major obstacle is the cost. Each bus costs between $250,000 and $400,000. We have 13 buses on our fleet right now in Portsmouth, so, as you can tell, that's,
What is this, a non-electric?
I have that. Find it. 127,000 is one diesel bus,
And what was the other numbers?
250 to 400.
Double. More
Yeah.
than double.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have to purchase the chargers. And according to what I was able to find out, and don't trust my numbers, but I did some very preliminary research. 45,000 for each charger. And then there has to be about 200,000 for maintenance every year for the buses. So, Bobby, is that correct?
I don't know, it sounds like a lot.
Oh,
But
Maybe
I don't know.
before the bus.
I'm not saying it's not correct.
well, no, it
Oh.
might not be correct, trust me.
Are those chargers exclusively devoted
It-
to the buses?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so it can't be used for other vehicles?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I mean, the cost I got was for the buses, so actually, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it
Okay.
could be
This
used for
one-
something else.
Yeah,
This one says the annual maintenance cost is 4,400 for electric, 6,500 for diesel, 7,000 for heavy.
I
Five
think,
thousand for propane, but are you talking about the chargers, not the buses?
I just got a cost for the maintenance of the whole project,
Oh.
I believe.
Does
is what
the
I-
city own the buses or do you?
No,
con-
we rent-
you
we-
Contract
yes.
for them.
Yes, we do not own the buses.
So if you had, the is it Student Transportation Authority or administration that you contract with, you would
Yeah.
just obviously have to pay them more for
Yeah,
EVs.
our budget is over about 1.3 million a year.
The city
for our
wouldn't be
buses.
buying the buses, the contractor would buy the buses and then charge you as part of the contract. Probably.
There's different ways
I don't know.
to
I-
do it. One way would
I'm
be
not
to
sure.
find a contractor to do it. And just put in a contract to see if someone would be willing to do it, and obviously it would cost far more money. The other way would be to invest in it ourselves, but that's a break from what we've been doing for the past however many years.
The only community in New Hampshire I could find that has electric buses is Concord.
Oh,
New
wow.
Hampshire. But I didn't call
Did you
everyone.
see the material that I sent out to you and FE and Jess a couple days ago that was from the New Hampshire CAP presentation with the what's the name of the contractor? That's
STA.
STA's sustainability director was the presenter
Oh.
at I think last month's transportation working group. And she gave the case study of Ware.
Of where, New Hampshire?
Yeah,
Okay,
where
I
they're
didn't-
providing EVs.
I just researched ones that I had heard about. I didn't have an opportunity to.
But I guess
look at
they would be a good source of how the economics work between, the two models you described, Josh.
Well, the only one I could find was Concord, and they have purchased 3 buses, which will be ready by the end of the year. But it was totally funded through the EPA grant, which also paid for the chargers. It paid for everything. And he said there's no way they would have been able to do it if they didn't get the EPA grant.
I think that was the
asked-
case for the Weir one as
Okay,
well. They-
okay,
they
yeah, because
also
they're so
had-
expensive, I guess, if you can't get the grant, it's hard for a community to absorb the cost. And I asked if there were EPA grants available now, he didn't know, so I
I
didn't
think
have a
those
chance
are
to.
going potentially into the wood chipper as we speak in the budget. for the company.
Right,
Yeah.
so at this point, we don't know, I guess, but, I also.
What about fuel costs? Would there be any, fuel cost savings?
I think it's in that thing I handed out. This is our business manager. He actually, this summary is a little negative toward electric. But one thing that he thinks has potential is hydrogen. And he wanted to suggest that we look into hydrogen buses. I don't know if anybody knows anything about that. One of the suggestions he has was maybe hydrogen. Have you ever heard of that?
Not.
Has anybody ever heard of that?
Yes,
Time.
so hydrogen can run on internal combustion engines.
Yeah, so I guess my summary of all of this is we need to do research. This committee needs to do research because there's a lot involved and the cost is high. We certainly can't absorb it in our school budget. I don't know if the city, the CIP, I don't know how, I'm baffled, I guess. After doing all this research, I'm baffled because of the cost. The cost is high.
I think probably for this one, the action item would be to do more research.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think we need to do more research.
One of the things that Effie suggested in the sort of email circulation we've had the last few days is inviting the same speakers who talked for the New Hampshire CAP to the transportation group.
That might be a good
And I
idea.
sent around her a screenshot of her slide on where, I mean, she's the contractor and, but she's the current contractor. It isn't necessarily that you'd be marketing a new contract because we probably would be fairly straight, but she's a very good speaker on the pros and the cons. So maybe she could come talk to this committee.
Looking at the federal subsidy here, did you say that Concord did manage to get one? Okay, now,
They got,
how would they qualify? They're not rural, right?
Right.
Tribal, so that means they're high need?
no, what,
Oh.
I asked him that question because I saw that as one of the stipulations you had to be
Yeah.
a rural community.
I can see where it would qualify.
Yeah, he said that in his opinion, this was just, he's the maintenance person for the Concord School District. And he said, the problem with the rural is they have further to travel, so the power runs out. So they've kind of relaxed that a little bit and say, okay, let's give it to a community that doesn't have to travel so far with their buses. So that's why he felt they got the grant.
And how much did they get?
They
Was it
got,
full 3.25?
but enough to pay for three, they got $1.32 million for 3 buses.
From, that's the subsidy?
That's what they got from the EPA grant.
Seems like a lot. That's good.
But it covered the chargers and apparently it covered this maintenance cost.
And the current fleet of Portsmouth's, the 13
We have
buses?
13 buses.
No, are they all diesel?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Okay,
they're all diesel.
We can do better than that. Natural gas is better than diesel. The fine particulates are one of the worst pollutants out there. The least healthy.
Do we have, how do we, I don't even know.
I think if the contract for the busing company specified the fuel type,
Hmm.
you'd have to figure out if you'd get any bidders on the contract.
Or that bid option.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or
I
amend
don't
the
know if they
contract
tried to
for
do
the
Good
that.
next-
I
option.
really
You
don't
could
know.
go for that.
They may have tried.
Well, Wildcat, I know, has not gas buses, right? I believe they do.
I did put in a call to C&J and I'm waiting to hear back from them about if they have ever considered electric buses.
Coast might have an electric bus.
That's I can call them.
I think the
too.
Wildcat Post Bus is the UNH one.
I think in that presentation on the New Hampshire CAP,
The
That would be a
gas from UNH.
way to, way,
I-
at least to start.
I think that part of,
Yeah.
one of the comments was that the EV buses are not so appropriate for longer distance, like CNJ
Well,
types
she
of
mentioned that
distances.
about the rural problem.
Or regional buses, like
Yeah.
intercity buses and CNJ. I think
Goes
probably
too
not
far,
appropriate,
back and forth all the time, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know, but I do have a call into them, so.
And I think they also had some information on this. Unfortunately, they don't record these things. You can take really thorough notes, but they don't record them. And they also don't distribute the slides, but I think between Kurt Youngling, who organizes the thing and came to talk to us, and the bus contractor, I'm sure they would share their slides, and I had the screenshot that I had from, maybe I'll send that to Kate to send around to the group as well.
But looking at this, it appears that the electric buses has the lowest annual maintenance and lowest fuel cost. If you get over the hurdle of buying them, then you're better off in the long run.
But then he also says in here that we're in a cold climate
Mhm.
and they don't They don't do as well in a cold climate because they tend to, they get the snow and the elements inside the mechanism and it doesn't wear as well. So,
Well, the
so
bus
that-
also
that-
needs to be heated.
right, and that takes up a lot of power in the
Right.
winter because obviously you have to heat the bus to take the
Right.
kids to school.
Tyler,
So-
you were in on that meeting as well. I remember you asked the question about how receptive the drivers were.
Oh, yeah.
These, right,
That was
right,
an
yeah.
interesting response.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I think, do you remember what she said? It's pretty positive.
Yeah, after they get over the initial hurdle,
Yeah.
they're pretty into it. The buses are quieter. It makes it a better experience for the driver because the kids aren't yelling as loud. I
Yeah.
thought that was a fun angle.
And she also talked about cold weather, so I think probably would be a good speaker.
Oh, I think that sounds like a great idea.
'Cause I think it's a national company. They're not necessarily in New Hampshire, but she was talking about
Oh,
New Hampshire schools and New Hampshire service, because they're thinking about having a EV school bus action in the state cap.
And it would be interesting to see what she says about cost. How
Yeah.
do these communities pay for it?
I was curious about the occupancy of the buses too. I've seen a lot of hollow looking buses around. Maybe 10 kids on this giant bus. That's what I'm thinking.
think that's
Can there be any efficiency gains there? Somehow?
I know we
They-
examine
no,
them
I
pretty
can't do this
closely
bus.
every year. We don't have any extra buses, trust me, because
I don't.
right now you can't find the drivers. Since COVID, it's been very difficult to find drivers, so we really economize on how many buses we have, and every year they re-examine the routes and who gets picked up. You may have seen the bus after it had already dropped kids off,
Yeah, that's
so,
possible.
It's a different question.
yeah, that's a different
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
You got my interest up when you said hydrogen. And I'm always thinking on a higher level. Yeah, I don't have an answer to this, and there's people who might have greater. My understanding that hydrogen, the first question is, does anybody know, can a traditional diesel engine or gas engine be converted to run on hydrogen?
No, requires different sealant materials and stuff like that. So hydrogen can break down materials that are normally in a diesel engine. That'd be kind of rebuilt from the
Oh,
ground up,
because it creates
That's,
water.
you have to start with a new engine.
probably.
Um,
I mean, it's not really cost effective to convert one.
Okay. Second question that I have is, in terms of the long-term big picture, I've heard hydrogen can be one of the byproducts of excessive solar energy. So during the day, you get an overload of solar energy that can't be used for electricity. You can use electricity to break down water and get hydrogen. So in a way, that's a pretty way out there system, but maybe if we're going to build an infrastructure, is hydrogen preferable to having, when I hear about electricity, in the long run, do we want to have a big vision to go towards hydrogen rather than electric? And I don't know the answer to that one. And does anybody know that one?
I don't think the industry is there yet. I mean, there's that potential to do that. But it would take, it's just not, the capability doesn't exist right now.
That's what I'm aware of. And so it's like, do we want to encourage that capability? And maybe we're too small a player to do that.
Right.
But that's what I'm always interested in. How do we just keep in our sights what is ultimately the best system? Not put a lot of energy and money into doing a system that's going to be obsolete when we finally get it right. So that's why I was interested in whatever research you would get on hydrogen and what is the long-term thinking, so.
And the other option is propane too.
Mhm.
I don't know anything about that, but that's a possibility, I suppose, too.
Right.
thank you for this, Nancy.
You're
I
welcome.
know you said that you didn't have that much information. This is a lot.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
please thank Brian
Yes.
and going beyond what Brian provided and calling around was very useful.
Oh, thank you.
And Nancy, I would hate to see a project that you have time to research into. Because this is really.
Well, it's a start. We'll put it that way. It's a start.
Fran?
So I actually don't have that much information with my update, but as Jess had stated earlier, we had met to understand what the next steps would be for our items that we have volunteered ourselves for. And I've been doing some research about what local communities have zero waste plans or do not have zero waste plans. And I've sent out some emails and I've gotten one response from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee in Dover, New Hampshire. I didn't know existed. I don't know if anyone else is aware. But while they do not have a zero waste plan, they are willing to engage with us and said they would be interested in talking if that would add value. So just passing that message along.
And I think they do pay as you throw with their waste, don't they?
That sounds correct. Let me
Mhm.
check the email to verify.
As we look at this table and think about making it bigger to cover things that are covered, maybe in the cap, I think best practice examples would be another candidate for another column or along with the co-benefits, but that could be in the second table.
I think it's been 10 years since this committee talked about pay as you throw. So I brought that here before I joined. Any other?
Can I just backtrack for 1 minute? Just to be clear on the school bus EV, the actions that I heard come out of it were obviously we need to do some more research, but there also seemed to be a discussion of possibly having the representative from TSA, STA come and speak. Is that something the committee wants to pursue? Should we?
Same one who talked to the.
Yeah, should we pursue that? Is that something the committee would be interested in having her come here and?
I think that was Effie's suggestion and sort of email switch around, so if there's interest, probably Effie might be.
Do we know where she's based out of?
I don't know, because when I heard her present, she knew so much about New Hampshire that I thought she must be in New Hampshire, but then I Googled and I sent the link around to Effie, Jess and Nancy. So I think it's a national company. I don't know if they're more in the east.
may-
but-
Makes sense, see if she doesn't live nearby, maybe she'd be willing just to zoom in.
Yeah, no, I think that's what you would do, and I think that's what she did for the New Hampshire cap. And I think that's part of what she does. I think her title is VP for Sustainability.
So if I connect with Effie and ask her about reaching out to that person, this committee would be interested in
Yes.
making that happen.
What is STA stand for?
Student Transportation
Of America.
of America,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I sent around a screenshot from her Where example, so I can send that to Kate to circulate along with the links to the company. Sort of bigger picture on this, I think it's very good for us to be doing this and filling out this table, but I think it's probably good pretty soon to be thinking about what the products are that come out of this if we're trying to prepare something for, and is that the case that we're trying to prepare some content for an update to the council in August? Is that still the plan, Josh? And how do you see this getting boiled down into something that would be useful for the council?
So I think, yes, that's still the plan. It makes sense to present to the council. A sheet like this would be great to include,
Yeah.
but not to present on a screen like this because it would get confusing. And we wouldn't need to address everything when, a 5 to 10 minute presentation is best. And you could say there are more recommendations in
Yeah.
the packet and just mention them without going into great detail. So it might make sense for us to, whatever people are interested in, continue doing research, continuing to fill in the packet. Then at some point, we'll have to whittle it down, saying we just don't have enough information to include. And then we can start working on a presentation where knowing that only some of these items will be focused on in the presentation.
Does that make sense? Because
I
I
think that makes,
so if we end up with the 5 topics, and those could be the organizing topics for the October community conversation
Yeah.
as well.
And then-
potentially.
but to include a sheet like this as well, from just like, oh, here's some other things that we're pursuing. We just don't need to focus on them when we speak.
And this should have some kind of forward movement to it, like not just more information on the topics, but a sense of where the opportunities are to get some of the things in the cap done.
Yeah, it's like actual recommendations would be the goal. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, Josh, I know that you've been involved with kind of spearheading the solar array on Jones Avenue. And I'm wondering how close we are to actually making decisions on that. I mean, you're probably still doing homework on it. But I'm thinking about how to engage the residents, and one way to do that would be to lead by example. And I think if you did something really splashy, you know, like announcing a new solar garden on Jones Avenue or any number of other plots in the city territory, I think that would go a long way for keeping people, you know, just at least entertained, if nothing else.
I agree. And Peter, do you have any updates? I know that
Yeah,
there's
so
been
the
more talk about.
Portsmouth
spending
Energy
time.
Advisory Committee has looked at that and
Yeah.
is looking at that. So it continues. Public Works has hired a contractor to look at, so they've looked so far at I don't want to say more than I understand or know, but they've looked at how much solar energy could be generated from the landfill and what kind of system they could put in. What they haven't done is looked at a grid interconnect. They need to do this yield plan, I think they call it, or a plan to see how they could get the energy into the grid and what that would look like and how expensive that is. And then what it would take to permit something like that. So they're one step into the process, but I think there's a couple more steps to go, but they're still actively moving forward with it.
Oh, do they need to
Looking
be,
into it.
does the city fund that activity or?
The city would fund
preliminary?
it, certainly.
Oh, okay.
But it could be fun. They're going to look at funding mechanisms too. So it could be
Yeah.
that you buy it and you own it, or you could do a power purchase agreement where you don't
No,
buy it.
no,
you
I
just
was
pay for
talking about
power.
the research.
Oh, yeah.
That's funded.
City
Okay.
has to pay.
Yeah, okay. I just feel just a little embarrassed by how far behind we are. Other towns in New Hampshire. Even little old Somersworth has moved forward with solar array.
We have a solar array at the drinking water treatment plant.
Yeah, well, that's a good place
in
for
the high
it.
school too.
Yeah, yeah.
We
It
have
seems
quite
like a
while.
larger scale.
Out of the middle.
Yeah, a larger scale. So I think people need to know about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a meeting in June might be one place for them to know. Or to find out about progress. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Next, on the agenda. Community engagement, is that a separate conversation from the initial? I don't
That's
think
just
that's,
sort of a standing. Is there anything else
It's
we
the
need?
cousin of number 3.
Yeah.
And-
Are there anything else we need to talk about?
yeah, are there any other items that people would like to?
One back to the master plan. I think on the last meeting, we were talking about how it would be useful for the sustainability committee to have some input into the master plan as a committee. I don't know how that would take place. I know the EDC, I think, has a pretty firm line into the
the-
master plan.
Master plan contract calls for a advisory committee, and Jess is going to be your liaison.
Okay.
So he's agreed to it, and so you can share information with Jess, or you can contact me, or the committee can put their own input in on its own separately, but just to keep it consistent, it's nice to have one person. There's gonna be at least
Yeah.
one from the EDC or two, probably one or two. And then different groups, try to get a cross-section of the community, not to drive the plan, but to work as a sounding board to make sure we kind of cover the
Or offer the
Perspective.
perspective of the
The different
of
groups. Yeah,
sustainability.
yep.
Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome.
Is there,
My pleasure.
does anyone have anything else?
I have an update about our student.
Yes.
So I had made contact with this year's class president, and he gave me the name of a junior who will be going into her senior year, who was very interested in joining us, and she emailed me and had intended to come this evening, but had an award ceremony that she needed to attend. So the ball is sort of in her court at the moment. I asked her if she would be able to join us at all this summer, or if she would probably be joining us in the fall. So I'm just waiting to hear back, but we should have a student hopefully joining us in the
Great.
distant future.
Can you give us her name again?
Emily Wentworth is her name.
Any relation to the governor?
I don't know. I didn't ask that question.
I like this idea of maintenance of a committee to focus on results and systems. Personally,
Yeah.
I like that idea of some kind of monitor. And I don't know what, how, what kind of, how that would take shape. Who would occupy that role?
That was
Uh,
Bert's initiative.
Yeah, I
so
see
don't know
that. Yes.
if He wants to speak to that.
Say that again. John.
Monitoring the city's progress in meeting some of the CAP goals.
I think that,
No,
that what you suggested was more related to us as a committee, right? When we look at this,
I thought-
your
interpreted that differently.
action item on our little table here, the maintenance of the
Page 4.
committee and the focus on results and
Yeah.
systems.
But to back up a step to John's point, I think that focus on results and measures could be covered on any of those topics. I mean, the bottom line measure is reduced tons of carbon emissions, but
Mhm.
I think in picking out the topics, if we want to end up with 5 priority topics, those should be one part interest of the committee individually or as a group for what seems promising in terms of results. So
Yeah.
I think we probably all have that in the back of our minds.
And when we have community conversations, we have something to give them, something tangible. Right?
But we should be talking about results in terms of implementing the CAP. And I think
Exactly.
CAP
Sure. Yeah,
progress is meeting the CAP targets,
yeah.
which have metrics.
Well, what I'm aware of is on a large scale. And I was gonna ask you this, Peter, just because you're now in a different position than you were when we started this off. And I'm thinking myself, it's hard to know where we are at in terms of an incredibly rapid deterioration and a rapidly acceleration of solutions. And I'm making an assumption, I'm going to throw it out for your response, Peter, because now you have history, I have some history, others have history. When we started the committee, I would say my estimation that sustainability, if was even a talked about topic, was not actually put into policy or finances as such. I know that it is now, but if we were to compare it when we started, where are we as a city? Because we used to think of ourselves as a pretty good model for sustainability back then. when we adopted the natural step. The sustainability has started to become a household word. And as a city, when we talk about policy, people's work time and money spent, do you have any, I know.
Well,
it's
I'd take that question a little broader. Where are we as a city with sustainability? What are we building for like, what is the hotels that are being built? Are they sustainable? Or the houses that are being built? Or the different actions people that live in the city are taking will be part of that calculus, right? It's not just what the city government's doing.
Yeah.
I think sustainability is more of a understood word before when we started. When we started, sustainability was something we understood in the committee, but the community didn't necessarily understand it. Now it's pretty much understood what you mean when you say sustainability by most people, I think. Is it happening as much as it should be? Probably most of us would say no, not fast enough. I mean,
And
you know,
I would say, if you were to say the three things that you see that are actually part of the city structure that is promoting the movement towards a healthier planet, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'd say all the city buildings we've built have been LEED certified.
That's what that's where.
And that's one of our biggest areas we can make a difference in. We certainly haven't changed over to electric vehicles. But are all the buildings in the city LEED certified? I don't think so. You know, some are, and we ask them at every site review meeting to provide it, but we haven't required it that everybody be LEED gold, and I don't know that we can, as a city, require
Well,
that.
The new construction, if the police station, for example.
Yep.
That would qualify, right?
That should be,
Yeah.
but they're
I mean,
not
that's a
there yet.
priority. Is that a priority or?
It is a priority for the
Yeah.
city government to build LEED buildings. Yeah, they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
been. Every building they've built has been LEED certified
Yeah.
or have some sort of LEED
Mhm.
component, but LEED silver seems to be and that's the green building standard the city has adopted,
Mhm.
so. But it'd be nice I think some of the buildings, I don't want to say, there's a lot of buildings that have been built that are LEED certified or are green in some way. But they're not all.
And that's probably because it's becoming economically smarter to build a green building. That's like the economy is already driving that.
And the
So
building code was moving that way, but now the state is trying to take us back in time in terms of where we are with green building a little bit.
Are you asking for like a report card, something like that?
I was reflecting on, every once in a while, I'd like to see where we are
Yeah.
in terms of what this committee is doing, because sometimes we're down here at a pretty, let's get specific results. And I think about in Scandinavia, when McDonald's was trying to do sustainability because they were being attacked because they had styrofoam things for their Big Mac.
Mhm.
The environmentalists attacked them. Then when they actually went to the cardboard,
Yeah.
they got attacked because they were cutting down the forest.
Mhm.
So they said, well, yeah, we can't win. How can we win?
Yeah.
That's when they went to the natural step and they said, okay, here are the 4 conditions that will get us to a climate safe planet. And they printed it on every one of their sheets that anybody got for a placemat. And they printed out and they said, here's our goal. Here's what we've accomplished this year. And that you talked about, how do you get out to the public? Anybody went in to get a McDonald's, got a sustainability report on their placemat on the 4 systems conditions.
Mhm.
To me, that is a lot more viscerally real to me. And I'm not used to working
No.
with this kind of information. This is very heady. I listen to everybody, but I'm trying to see how do we translate and get the bigger picture? Because all of us want to do the right thing. But I think in this environment, it's much even more complex to do it. So my question was just to stimulate some thought about where we're at in the big picture. Thank you.
Do we have a meeting in June?
Yes.
Does anybody?
26.
You are supposed to facilitate.
I'm supposed to facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that. I feel like I'm too. to the community.
Says the former assistant mayor and current chair of the school board.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, one thing about this group, you get up there, you got a lot of support. You say, I don't know what to do. And everybody
Everybody
looks up.
tells me what to do.
Everyone is a good facilitator.
If that's the case, then I'm fine.
If there's nothing else, I'm gonna motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then